Merci beaucoup d'être venu. Nous sommes en plein milieu de la plus grande crise économique depuis la Grande Dépression. Nous avons le plus grand déficit dans toute notre histoire à l'extérieur de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, le plus grand déficit dans le G20, le groupe des 20 pays les plus industrialisés. Nous avons le plus haut niveau de chômage au G7, à part de l'économie socialiste d'Italie. Il y a des millions de Canadiens ayant aucune idée comment ils paieront leurs factures dans quelques mois, sans emploi, sans salaire. On penserait qu'un gouvernement serait concentré sur une telle crise économique. Mais que fait ce gouvernement? Pas de budget dans une période raccord de 18 mois, même si les 10 provinces et 3 territoires ont pu présenter des budgets, même si l'Angleterre, la France, le Japon, l'Allemagne ont pu présenter des budgets, ce gouvernement n'est pas capable. Des mises à jour des dépenses de chaque 2 semaines que présentait Bill Morneau sont disparues. Selon le directeur parlementaire du budget, il y a 40 milliards de dollars de dépenses sans aucun détail. On se demande s'il y a quelqu'un qui gère nos finances et notre économie pendant cette crise. Qu'est-ce que le Parlement peut faire? Mais normalement, c'est le comité des finances qui agirait là-dessus. Alors pourquoi le comité des finances ne fait rien maintenant? Parce que les libéraux ont commencé une filibustered, des discours sans arrêt pour empêcher le travail du comité des finances pendant la crise. Parlons des faits. Les libéraux ont prononcé 171 000 mots pendant 30 heures pour empêcher et paralyser le travail du comité des finances pendant 5 semaines. En plein milieu d'une crise économique, le comité qui est responsable pour l'économie est paralysé par le gouvernement. Et ces discours-là qu'ils prononcent dans le comité, est-ce qu'ils ont rapport avec l'économie? Non, non, non. C'est des discours par rapport à la Bible chrétienne, au Torah juif, au Coran islamique, par rapport aux philosophes grecs. Il parle des personnages des dessins animés comme Pokeroo. Oui, c'est vrai. Pendant une crise économique au comité des finances, vos députés prononcent des discours par rapport à Pokeroo au comité des finances. Ils prononcent ces discours-là pourquoi? Afin d'empêcher la divulgation des documents unis, dans le scandale uni. Moi, j'ai simplement mis une motion pour protester le fait qu'il y avait 1000 pages de documents liés à ce scandale caviardé. Et au lieu de simplement donner les documents aux légistes pour une revue objective, les libéraux ont continué ces 5 semaines de discours qui n'ont rien à voir ni avec le scandale, ni avec l'économie dans la crise COVID-19. Nous sommes dans une crise, les gens sont en train de souffrir, les petites entreprises sont en train de fermer. Le comité des finances n'a même pas pu repérer le projet de loi pour l'aide à loyer des entreprises parce qu'on était paralysés. Et maintenant, 2 mois après le début de ce programme pour aider les petites entreprises à payer leur loyer, on n'a pas de programme. Pourquoi? Parce que le comité des finances n'a pas pu faire son travail pour corriger les erreurs de la ministre. C'est urgent, là. C'est la raison pour laquelle je suis ici aujourd'hui afin de mettre à côté mon chapeau partisan et de proposer un compromis afin de mettre fin à cette obstruction au comité. Les libéraux ont caviardé 1074 pages de documents dans le scandale uni. Il dit que la raison pour laquelle il ne peut pas divulguer ces documents sans caviardage, c'est parce qu'il y a des secrets de cabinet dedans. D'accord. Si c'est vraiment le problème, les conservateurs seront d'accord pour mettre à côté ces documents qui sont marqués de secret du cabinet. Mettons-les à côté pour l'instant. Et donnons tous les autres documents aux légistes parlementaires, c'est l'avocat de tous les parlementaires de tous les partis, pour voir si ces documents devraient être livrés et divulgués au public. Faisons-le aujourd'hui. Permettons le légiste, qui n'est pas un conservateur, ni un libéral, ni un néo-démocrate, de faire son travail et d'en faire rapport pour que les Canadiens puissent savoir si oui ou non il y a un camouflage dans tous ces documents caviardés. Et finalement, en faisant ça, on peut recommencer le travail du comité des finances afin de nous adresser à la crise économique qui détruit les vies des Canadiens. Faisons notre travail. Nous sommes élus ici, pas pour jouer les jeux politiques et pour parler de Pocahou ou des philosophes grecs ou d'autres enjeux qui ne sont pas liés à la crise. Les gens souffrent. Ils ont besoin des actions directes et immédiates. Agissons pour les Canadiens et non pas pour des camouflages. Donc, nous proposons ce compromis et nous nous attendons à ce que le gouvernement nous réponde rapidement pour qu'on puisse mettre fin à cet jeu pendant une crise lorsque laquelle les Canadiens ont besoin de nous. Merci beaucoup. Now in English. We're in a massive economic crisis here. It's the biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression. We have millions unemployed, with the second highest unemployment in the G7. Only socialist Italy has a higher unemployment rate. We're the biggest deficit in Canadian history outside of the Second World War. In fact, it's the biggest deficit in the G20. We are heading quickly towards a financial crisis if we do not act. Small businesses are being evicted because the government's third attempt at introducing a rent assistance program failed when the minister couldn't even draft her own bill, and the Finance Committee was prevented from fixing her mistake. I have phone calls, we all have phone calls, from small business people who are in tears, terrified that their life savings are going up in smoke. With lockdown after lockdown to protect Canadians from the pandemic, we have people who are losing their livelihoods, losing their retirements, losing everything. Now, you would think the government would be focused on that problem. Well, you'd be wrong. We haven't had a budget in a record 18 months. Every province and territory has been able to introduce a budget, but not the Trudeau government. Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Japan have all been able to introduce budgets during COVID, but not Justin Trudeau. And what can Parliament do? Well, we have something called the Finance Committee, perfectly suited to help the government and Canadians get through a crisis like this. Over 800 people have called to ask to be witnesses at the Finance Committee. Small businesses, labor leaders, other groups are calling, demanding that their voices be heard. Why have they been silenced? Well, because this government has paralyzed the Finance Committee in order to cover up the we documents. You remember those 1,000 pages of documents? We simply asked that they be released without black ink all over them. Well, in order to avoid doing that, Liberals have begun to give speech after speech, almost 30 hours of speeches, 171,000 words spoken. paralyzing the committee for 5 weeks. And these speeches, what are they about? Are they about the people who are suffering because their businesses are closed or their jobs have been shut down? No, they're speeches about the Christian Bible, the Jewish Torah, the ancient Islamic texts, the Quran. They've given speeches about Greek philosophers. They even gave a speech about the cartoon character Pokeroo. Imagine you're a small business owner. You turn on television to find out what the finance committee is doing to save your business, and you see a Liberal MP giving an extensive speech about the cartoon character Pokeroo in order to run down the clock so that no one can find out what's behind the black ink on those wee documents. That's the priority of this government. Well, it's time we put aside politics. I'm here to take my partisan hat off and offer a compromise to get the committee back to work. The government claims that many of these documents are blacked out because there are cabinet secrets in them. And indeed, 46% of the blackouts are ostensibly justified on the grounds that they are cabinet confidential. The other 54% are blacked out for other reasons. So here's the deal. Why don't we take all of those documents the government has said are cabinet confidential, and let's just put them aside. Let's put them aside for now and give the other 54% of the documents to the parliamentary law clerk, the nonpartisan lawyer of the House of Commons who represents all 338 MPs. He is not a Liberal, a Conservative, a New Democrat, a Blockist. He is a nonpartisan lawyer to all of us. Let him look at those documents that the government has blacked out, other than the cabinet confidentialities, and report back on whether this is a cover-up or whether the blackouts are legitimately justified. If Trudeau has nothing to hide, he will accept this compromise before I even walk out of this room today. And for God's sakes, he will do it immediately so that we can get our committee back to work, so that the hundreds and hundreds of desperate organizations that want to testify about the devastation in their economic lives can get here and make their point and prepare for eventually introducing a federal budget, something we haven't done in a record 18 months. So let's hand over the documents. Let's put on our big boy pants, Mr. Trudeau, and let's get back to work. Thank you.
Today we have time for 6 questions total, 3 on the phone and 3 in the room. A reminder, that's 1 question, 1 follow-up per reporter. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions. Nous avons le temps pour 6 questions totales, 3 au téléphone, 3 dans la salle, une question suivie par journaliste. Operator, do we have a first question on the phone?
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. La première question, the first question is from Christian Noël, Radio-Canada. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Bonjour, M. Poilievre.
Bonjour.
J'aimerais vous amener à Québec, où Hydro-Québec essaie d'investir dans l'énergie verte au nord des États-Unis, alors que le régime de pension du Canada, de façon indépendante, investit dans une compagnie gazière qui, elle, met les bâtons dans les roues d'Hydro-Québec dans le nord de l'Angleterre. D'avoir 2 sociétés d'État comme ça qui se retrouvent dans un concours de circonstances dans 2 positions opposées, un sur les changements climatiques et l'autre dans l'énergie fossile. Vous en pensez quoi, vous, de votre côté?
Honnêtement, j'essaie d'éviter les discussions par rapport au Fonds de pension du Canada parce que c'est investi par des experts indépendants et je ne veux pas que les politiciens ou politiciennes s'y interviennent. Les politiciens ne sont pas les bonnes personnes à décider où mettre notre capital, où mettre nos investissements de pension. Donc, je vais éviter le commentaire là-dessus. Je m'excuse.
Je comprends. Donc, ce que je comprends dans ce cas-là, c'est que, par exemple, il y a certains groupes d'investissement comme la Caisse de dépôt qui souscrivent à des politiques mondiales d'investissement durable. Si je comprends bien, vous seriez contre le fait que le gouvernement fédéral change la loi qui a créé le régime de pension du Canada pour inclure un objectif d'investissement durable ou d'investissement précis sur les changements climatiques.
Mais le fonds de pension du Canada a un seul but. C'est de fournir une pension aux Canadiens retraités le plus sûr et sécuritaire que possible. C'est ça leur but. Ce n'est pas d'avancer les objectifs des politiciens.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Merci.
Thank you. The next question, la prochaine question is from Maura Forrest, Political. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. You say you're offering a compromise today. If the Liberals don't go for this, how long are you willing to let this standoff go on for?
But the standoff shouldn't go on another minute. We have to put an end to it now. Canadians are waiting. 800 witnesses have asked to appear. We haven't had a budget in a record 18 months, and there's no way that the government can start preparing another budget until we get those consultations at Finance Committee to provide the input. So we've got to get it done immediately. I expect, though, the Liberals will agree to my proposal today, because they say that the only reason they can't remove that black ink is because there are cabinet secrets buried behind it. So I've said put aside the cabinet secrets and give everything else to the law clerk. I have no doubt that the government will accept that compromise, unless they were lying all along about the real reasons why they put black ink on those documents.
Okay, thank you. I guess what I was trying to get at is, if they don't accept what you're offering today, are you insisting that you will not back down on this? How much longer could this filibuster go on for? And my follow-up question is, do you feel that this is something that Canadians still care about? Or do you think they're still paying attention to what's going on here after all these weeks?
Well, I have nothing to back down from. I'm not the one doing the filibuster. If you look at the word count, something like 95% of the words spoken in this speech-a-thon have been spoken by Liberals. So it's them that have to stop talking out the clock. There's nothing more than we can do other than offer them things to get them to stop. It's their filibuster, not mine. Yes, Canadians care, because we have a $380 billion deficit. That's $10,000 for every man, woman, and child in Canada, or $40,000 for a family of four. I can't find a single family of four anywhere in Canada that has received $40,000 in COVID relief benefits. So we got to find out where all the money's going, because it sure as heck is not reaching the people. Yes, there's been some good programs, the wage subsidy, the CERB, we've supported all those, but none of them add up to $40,000 for every family of four. So there are a bunch of parasitical Liberal insiders who are getting between the government and Canadians and sopping up that money. That's what was going to happen with this scandal. And we've seen countless other scandals since, where Liberal insiders and cronies have got their sticky fingers on the money and it's gone missing. So it's absolutely vital to Canadians that they find out where their money has gone and whether their government has used a health pandemic to enrich its friends at public expense.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. There are no questions on the phone anymore.
I'll take questions from the room. You go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. My name is Mohamed. I'm with the Canadian Press. The leader of the government in the House, Mr. Pablo Rodriguez, tweeted an hour ago, quote, "We have now agreed to send unredacted documents to the law clerk, except those that were redacted to protect cabinet confidences and unrelated materials." So, are you satisfied with this? Like, is this enough? Like, it's kind of, I see it close to what you were
The only difference is that Mr. Rodriguez is claiming that he can decide what's unrelated. That's the key sticking point. But if these documents that he wants to cover up were really unrelated, why were they included in the original bundle and blacked out? If they're totally unrelated to the WE controversy, why did the government put them in the bundle of WE documents and then cover them in black ink? The answer is because they are obviously related. And we just want the parliamentary law clerk to look at them and confirm whether or not they are irrelevant to our study. But if the government insists that it needs to put aside what it claims are cabinet confidences, fine. We'll do that for now. Put them aside for the moment. And let's look at every other document under the eyes of the law clerk, who can review them in private and report whether or not anything should be released. And if Mr. Rodriguez has nothing to hide, if Mr. Trudeau has nothing to hide, he'll agree immediately to my offer.
Some Liberal MPs in the Finance Committee and the Ethics Committee actually described the opposition attempt to look at these documents as, quote, a fishing expedition. What do you think of that?
Well, why don't they just give the documents over to the law clerk and let him decide? And if there's nothing damaging to the government, Trudeau's done nothing wrong here, then he'll just hand over the documents, let the law clerk confirm that. But remember, his family got over $500,000 of payments from the We organization that he turned around and tried to give that group $500 million. This Trudeau has actually shut down Parliament to stop the We investigations, threatened an election, and carried out this 171,000 word, 5-week, 30-hour filibuster, all of which provokes suspicion that there are some very dark secrets he is trying to keep under wraps. If I'm wrong, great. Give the documents to the law clerk and he'll say so. Thank you.
David?
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. David Thornton, CBC News. Do you feel like you're failing to do your job as opposition? Because it sounds like you're giving in a little bit.
We are proposing to get 54% of the documents that are blacked out immediately, let the law clerk find out what's in them, and report back to Parliament. And then we can, based on what we find in that respect, we can determine whether or not we need more further documents.
But yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, you were saying that you're entitled to these documents, and now you're saying you're only going to request 54%. So are you failing to do your job as opposition?
We are entitled to get all of the documents. We want them all as quickly as possible. We're going to get the first batch through this proposal, and then we'll see if there's a need to go further.
Mackenzie?
Hi, Pierre. Mackenzie Gray with CTV News. Over the weekend, there's been much talk online about Canada's piecemeal response to COVID-19, how provinces have made different restrictions and different rules based on each jurisdiction. Two questions to you. Who do you think in each province should be making decisions? Should it be based on the health advice, or should concerns and interests of businesses be put into play? And secondly, if it is brought forward at the federal level, if the Emergencies Act is proposed by the Prime Minister, is that something the Conservative Party would support at this point in time?
Well, we're not going to tell the provinces how to do their jobs. I'm a federal MP in the federal opposition. That's my role. At a federal level, the failure has been leaving the borders open for months after military intelligence warned of the risk of COVID-19, giving away our PPE to China and destroying the rest, and the glacial speed with which the government has approved rapid testing. Those are the principal failures of the federal government that have made Canada worse than most countries in our COVID mortality rates. As for the Emergencies Act, Conservatives are not proposing the Emergency Act be used at this time.
Is there a threshold at which, whether it be case numbers in certain provinces or a situation where hospitals are overwhelmed, that you think at some point down the line, as we look at the trajectory that we're on, that it could be a useful tool or something that's necessary to be used?
We're not proposing that. Thanks.
And I will check if we have our last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. We do not have questions on the phone. Nous n'avons pas de questions sur le téléphone.
This concludes the press conference.
Beaucoup.